Teachers of Reddit, when did you realize a kid was gifted? Ain't a teacher, and it's my little brother, but I thought I'd share it. When I was around 14 and he was around 6 years old, I would watch lots of YouTube videos in English, ain't our native language, and he would just sit on the bed behind me and watch for hours. I thought he was just bored and didn't understand anything from what was being said. Fast forward a year, and we were on a long car ride, and he picked up a history book in English. After a couple hours, he tells us he has done reading it. Dad laughs and says, "Oh, sure." I ask him to read a sentence, and he translates it. He proceeds to absolutely nail it and shock us. This kid was always bright, but never really inspired by much of what he did. Seemed a little lazy, but wasn't troublesome. He was just kind of a neutral kid in the class. That we did one day of Lewis structures, and he thought it was too easy. Give him a harder worksheet, which he finished in like 3 seconds. So I gave him an organic formula that had 12 different isomers and some resonance structures. He came up with all of them in less than 15 minutes, including ones that had to do with how the object would look in 3D, even though we never covered it. Kid is currently working on his PhD of Yale in organic chemistry. Biology teacher here. Had a new student come in at age 15. He didn't talk much, but he did all his work as asked and did it well. One day we were having a discussion about something and he joined in. It ended up being a back and forth between just the two of us, and at some point I realized I was discussing pretty high-level stuff with a 15-year-old. He's a neurosurgeon now. There was this kid in my HS chemistry class who would sit in the back, never really talk to anybody, and finish all tests and assignments in less than half the time. Chill guy, just kept to himself. One day we had a test on stoichiometry, which, if I remember correctly, involves a lot of conversions across different units with multiplication and division of factors out of the hundredths place. You get a lot of long numbers, really need a calculator to keep it all straight. Anyway, the test goes on and it reaches the time he normally finishes, but this time he doesn't. I think, oh crap, this test must be a killer if this kid hasn't finished yet. Everyone else must be fricked. Time gets to about 15 minutes left. We're all panicking. Then finally the kid gets up and turns it in. Still the first in the class, mind you, but by a much smaller margin than normal. A week goes by and we get the tests back. Big shockwave in the class because this kid gets a 0. Teacher thinks he has been cheating because all of his answers were basically close but off by enough that it is not a rounding error. They think he must have an answer key that he copied. Need to investigate further. After talking to him, though, that's not what happened at all. Turns out his calculator had run out of batteries right before the test, and so instead of asking the teacher to borrow one or get more batteries, etc., kid just decides to do all the math in the margins of the test. We are talking 5+ calculations of long multiplication and division out to the 100th place for each and every question. That's how he got every question right except off by a little. And when he was done, he went back and erased all the extra work because it wasn't supposed to be part of the test. Did all this and still finished before anybody else. I was amazed. The teacher was amazed. Think he got 100% plus extra credit and they told him next time to just ask for a calculator. It was mind-blowing. I'm a preschool teacher, and I knew a 3-year-old girl that had very extensive vocabulary and could already read really well. Once during lunchtime, a little boy scarfed down his food, and her response was, "Wow, he must have been famished." I was blown away. She also taught me about the digestive system once during lunchtime, and it was accurate information. But her favorite object was the solar system. She was full of facts about the solar system, and she would teach me new things all the time. I always told her that she wasn't ready for kindergarten. She's ready for college. One child, he was more ahead of his peers in every aspect. It seemed like he was babysitting the rest of his classmates. After a week of teaching the class simple coding, he built a fully functional multiplayer game with material he taught himself. This was at age 8. Another child consistently produced excellent work, finished early, and could discuss his viewpoint in depth and actually made me change my viewpoint. He was brilliant in maths. Once, I was explaining a new concept to the class and worked out one example together. I told them that I would guide them in the second example so that I can help whoever needs, and I hear a really genuine and cute, "Oops, I just finished them all now." I'm a special ed teacher, and I teach kids who have emotional and behavioral disabilities like oppositional defiant disorder or autism, which manifests as anger, that kind of stuff. But anyway, last year I had a kid who we think had a photogenic memory and was a possible savant. He could see a map once and be able to draw it nearly perfectly hours or even days and months later. He had almost every detail too, and all the towns and cities spelled correctly, and major land features, and even the major highways correctly labeled and named. He also was like a human calculator. You could ask him nearly any math equation and he could answer it in a few seconds in his head. Granted, they couldn't be extreme equations, but pretty much anything like PEMDAS-wise, he could do in his head quickly. His trouble was that he was very aggressive, and we could never put him back in a gen ed classroom because he was such a danger to other kids and teachers if he became annoyed or upset. But he was a good kid and very intelligent. He just had a lot of trouble with his emotions and behavior. I knew when he surprised me by reassembling an engine out of a car all by himself in a single 90-minute class period. It was right before school let out for COVID. I had to hurry up and get some projects thrown back together quickly since school is closing. He asked to do it, so I let him try and went off to do other things. By the end of the class, it was completely assembled. Never asked me for help, and it was working. Definitely gifted. Straight A's in school from the start, and the ability to hold a pretty adult conversation with me when he was like 7 or 8. I don't really make a thing of it, and neither does he. He doesn't have very much homework to bring home. He does it at school while still in class. He's a freshman this year, and grades are only slipping a bit, all A's except for one B. We've never had him tested, but all his honors teachers assumed he was gifted by his grades and conversational skills. I am a lucky parent. I wouldn't really say he is gifted in any particular area, he just seems damn smart. Before you ask, no, I'm not a gifted parent. I got B's and C's in school, same with his mother. I realize I'm blessed, and I am thankful for that every day. He knows he is smart, but does not exactly brag about it. I came into the room. He was playing a few strings on the guitar. I asked what it was, and he softly pedaled it. I pushed a bit further, and he started playing what he'd written. I was blown away. Of course, it needed a bit of fine-tuning, a guitar solo in the middle, and a few ooh-la-las here and there, but he'd written a legitimate rock song. Blew his parents away when we played it in concert. After less than 1 year of music lessons, it was clear the student would likely become concert pianist when he learned 15 of Bach's 2-part inventions from memory and played them brilliantly. I was teaching distance over time graphs. The student stated that if the line just went straight up, that it would indicate teleportation because distance has been gained but no time has passed. This was 5th grade science. Edit. This kid ended up skipping 6th and 7th grade, 5th to 8th. He was a super humble kid. I miss having him in my class. I knew a kindergarten student, 5 to 6 years old, was gifted by her art. At that age, art is a very loose term, but this girl was drawing detailed drawings. Her people had hair and eyelashes and fingers and fingernails. The amount of detail she put into her art is very advanced for someone of her age. An interesting test for toddlers is to see if they can hold an extended back and forth conversation with adults. Most kids at this age, and most grown-but adults, are just asking for something or telling you something. Not a teacher, but a student with a gifted kid in his class. In 3rd grade, we had a new student come in who had just moved to the country with his family. Our teacher saw he was smart. She challenged him with some math we were meant to learn in a couple weeks. He solved the problems, no problem. She tried some 4th grade level math. Again, he solved it with no problems. After she called in one of the 5th grade teachers, she gave him some problems meant for 5th graders. As expected, he solved those without any problems. They kept going until he got a question partially right. I believe, but that point they were giving him stuff intended for early to mid 6th grade students. Last I heard, this kid got a degree in mathematics from Carnegie Mellon University. Not a traditional teacher, but I taught guitar at a mom-and-pop guitar store in my hometown. A few years ago, a lady brought her 7-year-old daughter in for formal training. Now, 99 out of 100 times, a kid that young wants to play the guitar until they get one. After that, it sits in a corner and collects dust until it makes its way to Goodwill or something. This girl had legitimate talent, though. She managed to teach herself very basic chords on her own and had even began writing music. Everything I taught her, she learned within seconds. Also discovered through comparison with my own ear training that she had perfect pitch. Musicians are peens. Many of us rarely recognize or appreciate true talent in someone else, but this girl was truly something special. If she isn't a famous/successful musician someday, it will be a travesty. Took a summer job helping at a daycare. One of the toddlers, about 18 months old, was way ahead of the rest. could talk full sentences, knew his ABCs, could count beyond 20, already had shapes and colors down. I've seen kindergarten-age kids that haven't mastered some of these things. He's in his early 20s now with the master's in engineering and a six-figure salary. We took standardized tests like the second week of school. Hadn't really done much academic yet as it was elementary school, grade 5. And most of what we'd done was routines and introduction/games. Kids scored at a 10th grade level in math and 9th grade in reading. Okay? Whatever. Impressive, but not unheard of. Except this kid was at the worst school in the state, literally ranked dead last. His whole schooling career, nobody else in my class scored above a 6th grade level, and anything and most were 3rd to 4th grade level. I basically had to do entirely separate lesson plans for this kid. While the rest of my class did multiplication facts, I had a coding curriculum and was teaching him basic languages. He had his own reading group in addition to the high reading group. It was even more incredible because he'd already been in trouble and in the principal's office the years before. I sent him to ISS once, all year. Really low for that school. Kids on other classes went literally daily. I had a few go once a week. I begged his mom to switch him out of that school track, said I'd fill out any paperwork, write any letters. It was my only year as a teacher, not sure what happened to him. Mom never contacted me. He finished the year by shattering all of his records on testing exams. Literally the 0.01% on his tests. He's legitimately one of the smartest kids I'd ever met, from the poorest school with the worst conditions I've ever seen. I guess I saw it right from the start. She started walking ridiculously early, like 6 or 7 months. Started talking not long after that. Declared around the year and a bit, I don't like diapers, I'm not going to use them anymore, and was toilet trained after that. Started talking to dead people not long after that. When she never got a single question wrong on any of my assignments and ended each marking period with an average higher than 100 due to extra credit assignments. I used to put a math joke/puzzle in the corner of the whiteboard. Essentially, 3 golden triangle numbers arranged in a triangle and a puzzle which gave the letter I as a result in the middle. In short, it was an Illuminati joke. I had this up for quite a few classes with nobody being able to guess what on earth it was. Until the last class of the day, a student who suffered from particularly invasive autism just came in, took maybe 3 seconds at most, and then laughed, saying, "Why have you drawn the Illuminati symbol on the board?" It wasn't so much that it was impossible, I was just blown away by how quickly he managed to do it. 11-year-old girl, year 7, in my maths class. She started asking questions that would have stumped the brightest in my top set year 11. It was a delight to have her in my class, and I'm so jealous of the teacher who gets to teach her this year. Foreign exchange student from China in the 8th grade. His writing abilities far exceeded the majority of even the accelerated class. I moved him from regular English to accelerated, and not only was his writing strong, his insights were so deep and thoughtful. At the end of the year, I learned not only was he a top student in my class, he won Student of the Year in Spanish as well. I'm not a classroom teacher, mostly music, but I had a small group of 1st and 2nd graders for a math flex block. Basically, we grouped the kids by level instead of grade or class, and I had the extension group. They had all the core concepts, and we were building on them. This one 2nd grade kid was something else. We were working on double-digit adding and subtracting with regrouping, borrowing, and somewhere along the line this kid figured out multiplication. Then he figured out he can use those rules to multiply large numbers that end in zeros, e.g. 700 times 4. He expanded this rule to include more zeros. Then he figured out he could start putting numbers in the tens and 1 slot. And then school was shut down. My MIL had my husband when she was 15. Sometimes during college, she had to take him with to her class because she couldn't find a babysitter. My husband would raise his hand during class and ask relevant, thoughtful questions. By the time he was in 3rd grade, around 7-ish years old, he was able to do statistics. His mom just got her 2nd master's degree, and my husband is still annoyingly intelligent, LOL. I'm not a school teacher, but I used to be a hockey instructor way back. During the summers, I was a hockey camp leader. Each week of the 8 weeks of summer, I would teach 20 to 30 kids how to play hockey. We were on the ice for 2 hours in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, but we had the kids from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., so there was a lot of time to fill. There was only one kid I remember. His name was Charles. He would register for 5 to 6 of the 8 weeks of camp we ran. Very quiet, sweetest kid you'll ever meet, was 9 to 10 years old. He was pretty shy and for whatever reason had really taken to me, so I was his go-to buddy or whatever. One day when we were trying to kill time, he went to a rec room where there were a bunch of board games and crap. Charles asked if him and I could play a game, and I said sure. Most of the games were already taken and the only one left was chess, so I asked him if he knew how to play and he didn't. So I said I would teach him. I showed him the basics, what each piece does, the point of the game, etc. I had been playing chess for years, so I was pretty decent. We did a practice game where I didn't really try and he understood the game shockingly quickly, to the point I could see him laying traps on that for me in the practice game. So we decided to play for real and I tried my best. I got absolutely whooped. He started explaining how he planned certain strategies like 5 moves in advance, thinking on a completely different level. We played 4 times and he dusted me every time. His mind was incredible. I always remembered his name and looked him up on LinkedIn a while back. He's in med school and won a bunch of awards. Pretty sure he skipped a few years. He's accomplished pretty much everything I wanted to accomplish, but in 8 fewer years. This kid is absolutely incredible. He was a crap hockey player, though. Kid took like 15 camps over 3 years, and I think he somehow got worse. Absolutely hopeless on skates. I teach at university, so most of the people you are dealing with are fairly intelligent otherwise. What generally impresses me is the occasional student who has a high capacity for original thought. Most people are capable of getting a degree. It's not particularly difficult once you've learnt the rules. What distinguishes a gifted scholar from anyone else is the capacity to think creatively and originally. It is the ability to look at a problem and think about various pathways of solving it, a willingness to try new things, and a high degree of openness to unknown things. Usually, you can tell a really able student when they preface a question with "what if" or similar terms, as it generally indicates that they are thinking of alternatives, hypotheticals, and trying to answer it. This is always a good sign and often shows positive engagement. By contrast, you can often tell a weaker student when they regularly ask questions such as, "What's the bare minimum? Will this be on the test?" etc. These are not bad questions as such, but it indicates that their priority is to get the mark/grade and leave. If that is your priority, fair enough. I hope you do well, but it will restrict your capacity to think creatively and originally. It's easy to tell around Christmas or a birthday. I'm not a teacher, but a past fellow 15-year student of mine in metalwork/craft shop for a project he produced a thing made of 2 car hubcaps. Looked like a UFO. Nothing was visible, but he'd rigged whatever was inside so the 2 hubcaps spun in opposite directions while staying together. It looked like a spinning top with a small shaft top and bottom. When it came to the presentation, he set it on the table and spun it using a drill. When the drill was removed, it spun, and we all waited and waited. When it was still spinning some 40 minutes later with only the slightest of a wobble. We had also moved on to the next presentation. The teacher asked what his project was demonstrating. He replied pretty quietly that he was working on a perpetual motion machine, but had not quite got it yet. The teacher called a meeting shortly after, and he was gone from the school within a year, allegedly signed up by some huge corporation who paid his full college years on a great salary on the condition he worked for them. Still going strong in research, etc., from what I hear. Edit. As I said, he was 15 years old, maybe dreaming of becoming the Epstein, who knows? Maybe he already knew it was impossible, but who knows? He tried. I thought of him later in life when I entered my first ever NYC marathon, and my father said to me, "Why, you'll never win." WTF. Sometimes you just gotta do what your heart tells you. Mike had a 4th grade teacher who let him work at his own pace and math. She managed to acquire books with more advanced material for him. He had taught himself calculus by the end of the school year. She was such an amazing teacher to give him the space to fly. Science teacher here, UK. The most gifted kids I've ever taught are those that in year 7, 11 to 12 years old, never gave up. Always pushed on when wrong and just kept trying. These are the kids that started average but walked away with once or twice getting 100% on a GCSE test. Part might be an inbuilt natural ability, but to me a truly gifted kid is the one that takes failure and turns it into a learning chance, as they will always get further in life. I teach foreign language at a university, and one semester I get a notification that there will be a minor under 18 in the class. I have to take some online test about that, so it's a bit annoying, but fine. Anyway, flash forward to a couple of weeks into the semester. I'm talking with one of my students during the break. He's an advanced undergrad in his junior year, taking grad courses in theoretical topology, thinning hair, glasses. Also very interested in philosophy, which was my major in college, so we got along on that front. I figured he was a little older than everyone else and had come to college late or something. Then it comes out. He's 17. He was so brilliant that he gave his high school principal an ultimatum after his first year. Either they give him the degree early and he goes straight to college, or he drops out and goes to college anyway. Ivy League were already looking to recruit him. I've never encountered a genius before that. And he was just this very humble, unassuming guy. Always did his homework and showed up on time. I'm not a teacher, but I was for a while a medicine student and met an extremely gifted mate there. He was just 16 instead of 18, we found out later. He came from a Middle Eastern country and didn't speak a single word in our language. In less than a month, he learned enough of the language to maintain a conversation, to follow classes, and to get around 95 out of 100 questions right in our first anatomy test. From that moment on, he just aced every single exam, and today he's working as a surgeon in the most important hospital of his country. When he was the first hand up basically every time question was asked of the class. When I did student teaching in band, did not become a teacher, we had this one 7th grader who was, I think, dyslexic. I don't remember. This was 2004. He was a percussionist. Well, it's not just drums. You put them wherever so they'll learn all the instruments. Now, I have damn good relative pitch. Go to conduct the band at a rehearsal and the timpani are as if I tuned them myself. For the uninitiated, timpani or kettle drums are like the bass guitar of the orchestral percussion world. If you tune the strings instead of using frets, using foot pedals as you play. A few great rehearsals later, as my practicum teacher and I realized this kid has perfect pitch. We gave him all the harder parts. I really hope this kid kept playing. Developing relative pitch isn't easy, and having perfect pitch is nuts. I teach editing to grad students and creative writing programs, but I once witnessed a kid who was so amazing that I know I was witnessing pure, raw genius at work. Her big sister was in my daughter's 3rd grade class. A bunch of us mommies were just chatting and laughing with our kids' teacher in their classroom while our kids and their siblings milled around the classroom. Out of the corner of my eye, I was noticing one tiny little kid about 3 years old. She was staring at the alphabet border near the ceiling and asked another kid to tell her how both the big and little letters say, not their names. I know my ABCs. I guess she thought upper and lowercase might be different. The big kid did, even the complications of C and Y. The toddler looked at the border, saying each of the sounds. She had our attention then toddled over to a book, The Celery Stalks at Midnight, sat on the floor with it, and sounded out the words, slowly and awkwardly at first, then faster until they sounded right, maybe not knowing all their definitions, but that didn't stop her. By then, we were all watching, mesmerized. She finished her awkward first pass, then read a few pages out loud to us, prefacing it with, "This is a funny book, Mommy, listen." She was only 3 years old, and with minimal help, she had taught herself to read in about 20 minutes. That remains the single most amazing few minutes of my life. I knew I was in the presence of a magnificent human mind, and I was deeply moved. English teacher here. I see it when they write. Classroom dynamics being what they are, not every kid talks much in class. Some prefer to stay back, and some are held back by some of the bigger personalities in class. But when they write directly to me. You can see it in their ideas and the way they express them, whether the spelling is perfect or not. You can tell when a kid is bright and insightful when you're one-on-one. One of my 3rd grade kiddos broke a PS3 controller apart and cannibalized the parts to make a handshake zapper device. Had a 4-year-old kid who insisted that I read a children's solar system book to him over and over again. After the 7th or 8th time, he was mouthing the words along with me. He couldn't read, he had memorized the entire thing. I'm a brownie leader for Girl Guiding, UK Girl Scouts age 7 to 10 basically, and we were doing a simple task with memory. They had a series of questions to ask for points, one of which was, if you add up all the coins we use, how much does it make? All the girls looked puzzled, and most began furiously counting on their fingers. However, one of them, after around 3 seconds of thinking, just said the answer without any hesitation. She worked it out faster than I did. I was very impressed. Context, I'm doing a biochemistry degree, so I do maths and stats all the time. Needless to say, she got double points. Edit. The sum would be 1p plus 2p plus 5p plus 10p plus 20p plus 50p plus ps1 plus ps2 equals ps388. Taught a girl in grade 1 in an advanced after-school program. She would fool around and laugh and giggle all class, and then come test time, perfect score on her English writing. All the other kids would have some minor mistakes. And this was in Korea. English was her second language. She got moved out of my class to the really advanced class, and I got a flower from her mom. I witnessed a janitor at MIT solve math theorems that was posted in the hallways. Started a kid on clarinet at 10. By age 11, he's blowing through Mozart's Clarinet Concerto like nothing. That's a solo for professional musicians, in case you are not aware. Not a teacher, but when I was in a top-tier U.S. West Coast college, taking a third-year biochemistry class, meaning there were a few semesters at prereqs, we had a classmate who came with her dad. She was so young that her feet couldn't touch the floor when she was seated in the chairs of the lecture room. That bastard probably messed up the grading curve. I'm a kindergarten teacher who is responsible for teaching students who are considered advanced for their age. A lot of my students are advanced, but few are gifted. This year, I had the absolute joy of working with a truly gifted student. This young man sees the world through numbers. He is fluent in advanced math topics, but the most amazing thing is how he taught himself to read. He assigned each letter, digraph, diphthong, and blender numerical value. He then correlates the numbers to sounds. When asked why he reads this way, he says, "It's easier to read through numbers." I was blown away. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.